I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, it's that time of year again. We've all been receiving our 2019 BC tax assessment. So every year at this time I do a blog. I'm not going to get into nearly as much of a detailed blog on how the BC assessment works and the mill rate, which is important, because I've done many blogs over the years. Go back into the January, February period, back 3, 4, 5 years ago, and you'll see all the other blogs that I've done on BC assessment, because every year people think your assessed values go up and your taxes are going to go up. And yes, your taxes are going to go up, but there is no direct correlation with your assessed value. It won't go up in lockstep to what your increase in your assessment is. Just like if your assessed values, in some cases, I've got some that have gone down this year, I'm not going to see a reduction in my property taxes. That doesn't happen. Property taxes go up every year. What the municipalities do is they adjust what's called the mill rate. I'm not going to get into it because I've done many blogs ad nauseum on this topic. Go back and watch some of my earlier blogs on it. But for the most part, for my assessments, keep it in a nutshell, I've got some that went up, some went up substantially. Some of my older one-bedroom wood frame and concrete condos have gone up quite a bit, because they're kind of in that price range, that affordability price range that I've talked about many times before, the magnet real estate that has really driven the values of those up. So my lower priced one bedrooms are up substantially in 2019 for this year. My luxury stuff, detached, higher end townhomes, those are down or treading water. And generally the rest of the one bedrooms that I've got downtown are up, 2, 3, 4%. Now, keep in mind, too, that these assessments, they're not all that accurate. First off, they are stale. They were done as of July 1st of 2018. So I would say, for the most part, they're already a little bit out of date. The market is probably, especially on detached and luxury, has probably trended a little bit lower since July 1st of last year. But I would say, for the most part, for condos, one-bedroom condos, let's say downtown Vancouver, most of those are probably still going to be selling just above tax assessed. They used to sell dramatically above tax assessed value. For 2019, and I don't know where the market's going to go over the next 12 months, but as I speak right now, generally most of the one-bedroom, two-bedroom condos will probably sell at or even a little bit above tax assessed. We'll see where the market goes. Now, in the Globe and Mail, Vancouver Sun, this is kind of endless. I've read a few articles here, and these have been going on for a while, from some UBC professors here that have been talking for a while now on trying to level the playing field and the property taxes in British Columbia. And they want to see the property taxes dramatically increased in this province. So I've blogged on this a few times before, but let me refresh everyone to how this works here and property taxes. Now, for many years, for the last 8 years, I've been telling people, because I always complain that the property taxes continue to go up as they get their assessments, which they do. Things get more expensive. People have to realize that, a good portion of your property taxes, the increases go to one thing, and that's protective services. Police and fire department make up a huge percentage of your property tax. But every year people will complain they're paying too much in property taxes, and I'm pretty quick to point out to them that, listen, in British Columbia and in Canada in general, our property taxes are quite reasonable. I'm not going to say they're cheap, because they're not cheap, but they are reasonable, especially when you compare them to other jurisdictions in North America, like the United States, or even in Europe. Our property taxes are quite reasonable. Now, this was something that was brought about 30 years ago or more. This was a mandate that the province and the federal government had many, many years ago, decades ago, to encourage home ownership. Because even the government back then recognized that people are a lot better off owning their home as opposed to becoming a long-term renter. It's a proven fact that long-term renters or lifetime renters have substantially less net worth by the time they retire. And most of them are living on pork and beans and barely scraping through if you're a lifetime renter, especially in a city like Toronto or Vancouver. It's a proven fact. Whereas homeowners who have bought their home in their 20s or 30s and kept it until they're 65 or 70 have substantially higher net worth. They've got a house that's worth $2 million, or even a condo that's worth $1 million or $1.5 million, that if they decided to, they could sell and basically just live off the interest or live off the dividends that that cash could produce for them. So the mandate of the government starting 30 years ago was to promote homeownership. And to do that, they decided, let's keep property taxes to a reasonable level. Let's also encourage them to buy a home by giving them a capital gains tax exemption, which I've talked about many times, and why I continue to laugh about people that have the audacity to say that long-term renting makes sense when it absolutely doesn't. Even if interest rates got back up to 8 or 9%, it still wouldn't make sense. Because you've got that capital gains tax, that principal residence exemption, which I've said many times before, has minted more millionaires in this country than all other sources combined, which it has. Principal residence exemption, you buy a $500,000 Yaletown condo today, and in 30 years you sell it for $1.5 million. That $1 million is flowing to you, that capital gain, completely tax-free. You'd have to create a $2 million RSP to match what that's going to give you just with the principal residence exemption. So the government had a mandate many years ago, let's encourage people to own their own home as opposed to being a renter. We don't want to be on the hook to support these people. We gave them the principal residence exemption, and we'll keep the property taxes low, which they are. They're not cheap, but they're generally low. So if you compare it to, say, the United States, let's take, for instance, Florida, for instance. If you had a $1 million condo in Miami, you're paying about $30,000 a year in property tax. That $1 million condo in Vancouver, you're paying about $4,000. That's the difference. But here's the rub. The big difference is we pay through the nose in our income tax. We are killed, and I've done many blogs on it, why I have to keep a bar in my office here when I do my taxes. I gotta have a bottle of tequila because I'm paying 50% of what I earn to the tax man here. And that's not the case in the US. If you go to a state that's got high property taxes like Florida, yeah, you're going to get killed on the property tax, but they do not have any state income tax in Florida. You're only paying federal. Your tax rate in Florida is less than half of what it is here in British Columbia. Plus, you've got a lot more write-offs down there too. You can deduct the interest on your principal residence, which is something you can't do here. So back to my point about the University of BC professors here, wanting to say, hey, people are getting a free ride on the property taxes. You know, listen, if you want to increase dramatically the property taxes and match it up to what they're paying in Florida or California or some other jurisdiction, that's fine, I'll pay it. I don't mind whatsoever. For my rental properties, it's all a tax deduction anyways, and I'm happy to pay it on my principal residence. Whatever that is, $15,000 or whatever. But you have to understand, if you're going to do something like that, you need to drastically reduce our income tax rates. Bring our income tax rates down to what they are in a place like Nevada or Florida. So that would be no provincial income tax. Just pay federal. But of course, that's not going to happen. It'll never happen. So people need to make sure. I don't think a lot of people are aware of this. Yes, our our property taxes here are reasonable, but we more than make up for them, especially if you're a higher wage earner, earning over 150 or 250. You're getting crushed on your income tax here, far more than what you would be paying in most jurisdictions in the United States, especially the ones that don't have a state income tax. So that's something that I want people to be made aware of it. But it's the other thing I want is just to pound home to people is why you want to own your principal residence. You know, I've talked about it many times on my blog here. I talk about it in my book. We don't get much here in Canada when it comes to tax relief. We get killed. Income taxes are some of the highest. I don't think they're the highest in the world, not even by far, but they're up there. Take advantage of everything you get. That's why you should own your principal residence. Take advantage of that principal residence exemption, which can shelter millions of dollars for you, tax-free. Look at what you would have to save in an RSP or a TFSA or outside your RSP to match that tax pot of gold you're going to get when it comes time to sell your principal residence. Take advantage, while it's still there, and I hope it still stays, of these low property taxes. They are generally lower, quite a bit lower than most other jurisdictions, but these are the few little bones they give us as Canadians principal resident exemption, and lower property taxes. This is why you want to own as opposed to being a long-term renter. Two of the best things they give us here as homeowners, and the government wants you to take these. They want to encourage you. Even they realized a long time ago that we don't want to be on the hook for these long-term renters. Give them some benefits here. Lower their property tax rates and give them a principal residence exemption. So keep those things in mind. It's another reason why long-term buying and holding and owning your principal residence is the only way to go in Canada. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.